Hi guys, it's Miss Meyer with another episode of the Miss Meyer Show, and today I had to come and switch locations. I had to move out of where I usually, do the show or whatever, into here because my husband's watching some crazy movie called, I don't know, some superhero. I don't know. It's terrible. So I was like, I'm going in a room. I'm going to do this. So, anywho, so let's go on. We're continuing with, chapter, I believe it's 7, the new to territory, a new beginning from territory to civil war. So last time in class, the week before we had, break, we talked about statehood. We started to talk about the War of 1812. We talked a little bit about Jean Lafitte, all those kinds of cool things. So now I want to talk to you about the early antebellum period. Now, antebellum is a word that means before the war. That's what it means. When you watch Gone with the Wind, which is, no, I've never told you guys this before, but it is my absolute favorite movie and book. But when you watch Gone with the Wind, in the beginning where Scarlett is, with all the pretty dresses and she's got those big frilly dresses and she's going to the barbecue over at the Wils's and all that other kind of stuff, that's antebellum. It's before the Civil War. So that's the period of time that we're going to be talking about in Louisiana. Now, Louisiana is the South, and I have to explain that to people in Texas. I'm like, hello, Texas is not the South. We are the South. I'm a Southerner. You are not. Because they don't get it here. They keep thinking that they're Southerners too. And I'm like, hello? No, you're not. But anyway, so this time period in the Old South was called the antebellum period. Now, this is when plantation life and slavery really reached the peak, the biggest point in life, antebellum life. The first thing we're going to talk about is the Adam-Onis Treaty, and this is during the first 10 years after Louisiana became a state. We eventually became a state. We had enough people. We ratified a constitution. We wrote a constitution. We were now a state. Well, during those first 10 years as we became a state, the population doubled. Most people in Louisiana still lived in the southern portion of the state. That's towards New Orleans, all those kinds of areas. The reason being is that this is the hub. New Orleans was the hub where all the activity was taking place. Not only social and religious, but cultural and, economic. This is where all the trading was done. This is where all the things were happening, was here in the New Orleans area, down in that southern part. This is before we had all the railroads connecting all these places. So all of your big interaction was being done in the southern part of Louisiana. So people moved there. That's where they lived. They couldn't get in their car and drive 40 minutes down the road to go to Target. They couldn't do that. They had to live within a distance of that. Now, you still had people that lived in rural parts of Louisiana, but the majority of people were down towards the southern part, more or less Louisiana area. Crazy, sorry. So the United States and Spain had signed the Adam-Onis Treaty, which said it gave us a few problems. In this problem, one of the big ones was the neutral strip. When we had acquired, parts of Louisiana from Spain, especially after the Louisiana Purchase, there was still that little section that we got from Spain. We had something called the neutral strip. So through the treaty, the Adam-Onis Treaty, United States bought Florida from Spain, and the two countries finally agreed on a western boundary for Louisiana. Colonel Zachary Taylor led American soldiers into the former neutral strip and built Fort Jessup near modern-day Many. There's a place called Many, Louisiana. M-A-N-Y, Louisiana. So he took this in this neutral strip. And what does neutral mean? It means it doesn't belong to anyone. So Zachary Taylor, who eventually becomes president, he's a colonel at this point. A lot of times we're going to see people that are big in the military become presidents. George Washington, Dwight Eisenhower, Zachary Taylor, Andrew Jackson. These are all big guys. Ulysses S. Grant. These are all big guys in the military that eventually become president. So Zachary Taylor, he led the Americans into this neutral strip and he built Fort Jessup. So after the Army came in, they built Fort Jessup, they started moving bandits out, moving people that kind of use this neutral strip to kind of do things that were against the law and of ill repute. Now that we had, with this Adam-Onis Treaty, that we had this Louisiana boundary pretty much created, in that neutral strip where people were, these criminals were kind of convalescing, especially, you know, when we talked before about the Kanatoks that were coming in and from America and residing in Louisiana and doing all kind of nefarious stuff. They were the ones that were sitting in this neutral strip. They were doing all kind of crazy stuff that was against the law. And the people of Louisiana said, hey, America, we are now a state. We deserve your protection. You better come over here and handle this. So Zachary Taylor, who does become president, decides, all right, I'm going to go build a fort. And he builds Fort Jessup. And I do believe that there is still some structural there that is, you know, dedicated to the whole Fort Jessup in Many, Louisiana. Many, M-A-N-Y. Okay? So Andrew Jackson now, what Battle of New Orleans is over. The War of 1812 is over. People are loving them some Andrew Jackson. They're like, he saved New Orleans. Oh my gosh, praise Andrew Jackson. We built a big statue to him. We have Jackson Square. There's Andrew Jackson Middle School. Used to be high school in Chalmette, Louisiana. Woot, woot, Chalmatians in the house. So, you know, he's a big guy. You know, we got Jackson is just like a really big guy now. We have big things. So, but now he is president, okay? And one thing that he doesn't like is he does not like that there are Native Americans who are living in the United States because he truly believes in manifest destiny. Manifest destiny is the term going from sea to shining sea. I think it's even in like, from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains' majesty above the fruited plains. And I think one of the lines in that song is from sea to shining sea. But anyways, what it means, I'm like the best singer. So what it means is that everything from sea to shining sea, from the Pacific Ocean for the Atlantic Ocean belongs to the Americans. Well, that's great. And that makes total sense, but we were not the first ones here. Before us were many Native American tribes who were living all throughout the United States, not to mention Louisiana, and they were here first. Andrew Jackson didn't believe that. He believed that this manifest destiny was the thing that was going to go down and that they needed to get rid of all these Native Americans and put them in one centralized location so that they could open up the United States for colonization for Americans. Okay? So Andrew Jackson believed that the Indians were savages and they were holding up the American progress of a manifest destiny. So during his administration, many tribes were forced to sign treaties in which they sold their land and had to move to Indian territory. You might say, what? How were they forced? Okay, guys, these Native American tribes, they had weapons. Yeah, they had swords and spears and arrows and things like that, but they didn't have guns. And a gun, you could be coming at somebody with a sword. That person with a gun's going to get you down. And you're worried about your family. You're worried about your mama and your kids and everybody. You're going to do what it takes to save them. So a lot of these tribes, including many in Louisiana, not many, the place in Louisiana, but many meaning a lot, they forced them to do this by, you know, basically either it's this or die. So they moved all these Native Americans, a ton of them, and they put them in one centralized location that they were going to keep them here in this location, and then they were going to open up the rest of the United States where they did live for colonization for America. Now that Indian territory is modern day Oklahoma. I live about 45 minutes outside of Oklahoma, and I've never been because I have no desire, but that doesn't mean that whatever, but oops, my camera. Let's go here. Yeah, I've never been there, but because I don't want to go there, but not because it's a bad place. I just don't want to go there. But anyways, so if you go into Oklahoma today, it is like prominent and preeminent everywhere, Native American culture. Everywhere. Like here in Texas, everything is all about Texas. We're the best. We're number one. And we're the biggest and the best. And they're very much about Texas pride. You go to Louisiana, you see a lot of fleur-de-lis, lots of, you know, just cultural things, Louisiana crawfish, shrimp boats, oysters, things like that. You go to Oklahoma, it's Native American everything. Even their license plate has like Native American stuff on it. So that is where Jackson and his administration moved the Native Americans that were in the United States. They moved them over to Oklahoma in what they called Indian Territory. Now, the thing that you need to remember is that these people didn't get on a bus or a car or a plane or a train to get to Oklahoma. They went on foot. And they didn't have a lot of time. They had to take what they could carry. They couldn't get a U-Haul and put all their stuff in it. They couldn't do that. They could do what they had to carry on their backs. So they had to travel from where they were to Oklahoma with whatever they could carry on short notice in the winter. So you can imagine traveling a ton of just days, miles and miles and miles in the winter with inadequate clothing, because if they're coming from Louisiana, they want to get to Oklahoma, they're going to have to travel through like parts of Texas and things like that, or around in Arkansas where these places snow, guys. These people don't know about snow. In Louisiana, I'm telling you, you've never experienced cold until you have experienced Texas cold. It is bone-chilling cold. It is like there's no humidity in the air, so that cold hits you. It's like needles sometimes. So you can imagine these people don't have coats, they don't have parkas, they're from Louisiana. They don't have that. They come in like little, Louisiana clothes. They don't have that. And they're coming with their babies, with their pregnant women, with their little baby girls and little baby boys, their old grandma, their old mama. Those people didn't make it. So they call this trail, this trek from one location unto Oklahoma, the Trail of Tears, because they had to keep moving. They had to keep going. So they would bury their babies. They would bury grandma. They'd bury papa. They'd bury anybody who died because of multiple things, mostly exposure, along the side of this trail. And they would cry. So, you're crying, you're sad. Your family member just died. Your home was taken away from you. All of your belongings, you couldn't take them with you. If you had something in your family, like I've got this is my grandma's. I'll show you guys. And I saved it through Katrina. It made it through Katrina, which was amazing. This is my grandma's. I don't know if you guys can see it. Isn't it pretty? It's from Nicaragua. She got it when she was about like 12, and my dad had it, and gave it to me, and then I'm going to give it to one of my girls. So this is something like a family heirloom. These Native Americans, they couldn't take all their family heirlooms. They couldn't bring these things with them. So they had to leave behind things that they worked so hard for. Things that they built their homes with their own hands. They built these things, these communities that they loved and been with forever. They had to leave it. So they're crying, they're sad, they're really upset about this whole entire Trail of Tears. So among the tribes that were forced to move were the Caddo Indians of Louisiana. Who else? Let me see. There's a bunch of them. And the big group in Louisiana were the Caddo Indians. Okay, now we're going to talk about Henry Miller Shreve. That's his name. Okay, I want to see where I'm going to stop. I think we're going to stop here with railroads, telegraphs, and levees. That's where I'm going to finish, and then we'll pick up in class economics and such like that. So Henry Miller Shreve was one of America's most famous steamboat pilots. He was the guy who really pretty much invented the steamboat. And what is so cool about the steamboat? Well, there's several things. One thing, if you guys have never ridden the Creole Queen or the Natchez in New Orleans, that's a steamboat, and they're phenomenal. Riding the Natchez, even though you only go like up and down the river and whatever by Gentilly and the West Bank, so what? But it's so much fun, and it's really cool. But the steamboat was a revolutionary invention in Louisiana, especially in areas like New Orleans. The reason was that the steamboat had a low bottom. It had a very, very low bottom where it could travel in shallow water. A lot of the water in some parts of the Mississippi is not very deep. And if you get some big ship, they're not going to be able to make it because they're going to trudge along the bottom. A steamboat was not going to do that. They had that ability to travel along the water. So the federal government hired Shreve to clear the Great River raft on the Red River, and that's along the Texas border, and open the river to steamboat traffic. So he used blasting power which is like blowing stuff up, and steam-powered snag boats, which would like drudge the bottom and pull up any kind of leaves or that. If you guys ever gone tubing at the Bogachiga River, Bogachiga, I think it is. I did it one time. But, I mean, I was afraid of the fish the entire time I went because my friends were going and I didn't want to be the scaredy cat that was afraid to go. So I went, but I will never do it again because I was in sheer terror the whole time because I was afraid the fish were going to touch me because I've always been afraid of fish. But anyway, if you go tubing down the Bogachiga River, you know that sometimes you'll hit like branches sticking out of the water and logs, you'll just knock it. It was just so gross. So in order to clear all of that for steamboat traffic, Shreve had to drag his snag boats, snag that piece of wood and pull it up so that the boats were able to go through. Shreve began at Natchitoches and he worked his way all up the river. So what he did is this, Henry Miller Shreve, is that he invented the steamboat, and his invention improved Louisiana's water transportation system, and it opened new areas up to settlement. Remember, like I said, people didn't go and live in random places because it was too hard to get to central location. But by opening up the river to steamboat travel and giving their people access to get to New Orleans and the areas of trade and commerce, more people were willing to move there. And this meant more people equals more money for Louisiana. So of course, the people of Louisiana and the guys in control were saying, hey, that sounds like a great deal. Okay? So let's see where else I want to go through. Settlers carved Caddo County. That's one of them. There's Natchitoches County, Caddo County, Shreve County, and Shreveport is named after Henry Miller Shreve. If you live in Shreveport, the reason your town is called Shreveport is because it was originally called the Caddo County, but they changed it, especially since the Caddo tribes were moved over to the Indian Territory in Oklahoma. They changed it in honor of Henry Miller Shreve, who opened up the river to steamboat travel and therefore allowed a huge population of people to go and live in what is today Shreveport. So Shreveport today, Henry Miller Shreve. Okay? So that's all I've got for you today on the Miss Myers Show. What we're going to cover in class, we're going to cover let's do this last one, okay? The pioneers and immigrants. The people were coming here to Louisiana now that everything was opened up. Greatly and thanks to Henry Miller Shreve, who is in fact the namesake of Shreveport. So thousands of immigrants started pouring into Louisiana. We were a baby state. We were a young state, and we were cool. We had all kind of cultural things that these other states didn't have. There was good music, good food, good people, good culture, great stuff. So people are wanting to come here. No longer are they like afraid to come here. Remember in the beginning, they were like, don't send me to Louisiana, no. Because it was all kind of crazy stuff. Now people are like, yeah, I'll come. Yeah, sure. So you had people moving in from wagon trains from Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, the Carolinas. They had people coming through all over these places. Other immigrants, they sailed into the port of New Orleans from Germany, from Ireland, from Great Britain, from France. People that, they had people coming all over here. Come on, they were all willing to do it. So largely, due to this huge influx of people, the Louisiana's population grew more than to 700,000 over the next 20 years. So we were like busting at the seams. So I think that's crazy. In about, 50 years time, Louisiana went from a state that people didn't want to come to this state where people couldn't wait to get here. So we've, that's pretty good. That's pretty cool. I think that's awesome. So New Orleans, became, of course, the biggest city, and they had the population of 168,675 people. Now, that was not only the largest city in the state, but it was also the largest city in the South. New Orleans is not very big. So you can imagine the amount and the influx of people that were living in New Orleans. It was like whoosh, packed. In fact, you might want to ask some people in your family. My great-grandfather, he came to New Orleans for the same reason. He came here from the Philippine Islands to New Orleans because this was the center of opportunity. This is where all the dollars were to be made. My grandmother, the one that gave, when I have this ring, she came to New Orleans from Nicaragua because that's where opportunity was. And this is in the 1930s, you know, and my great-grandfather came here even earlier than that, in the 1900s, so my grandmother came here in the 1930s. So New Orleans was always a center of growth for people to come and restart. After Katrina, one of the biggest themes that we had in New Orleans was called rebirth. That's what everybody was saying. Rebirth, Phoenix Rising. I don't know if I have any like X-Men fans in here. I'm not an X-Men fan. My husband is. I'm not. But anyways, there's a character in there called the Phoenix because she rises out of the ashes. And that's what Louisiana, that's after Katrina, that's what we were known, that was our symbol. And that is not something that just happened in 2005 when Katrina happened. People were always coming to Louisiana for a new start. And that's something that we learned here. It's not something new that was invented in 2005. Louisiana was a phoenix, an area for rebirth and for renewal. Ever since the beginning, really. All right, so that's all I got for you guys in class. We're going to go over antebellum improvements, economics, slavery and plantation life, education, healthcare, politics, and that's it. So I'll see you in class. Have a wonderful week. I hope you guys had a great spring break. I did. So I will see you guys soon.